You're listening to episode 251 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, your host, and today I have Dr. Carolyn Dean returning to the show, this time to speak about sugar and its relationship with yeast overgrowth, which is commonly talked about in natural health circles as Candida. Carolyn Dean acquired her medical doctor degree at Dalhousie Medical School in Halifax, Nova Scotia, about 5 decades ago. In 2004, she released the book called The Magnesium Miracle, which she says in the interview that companies are now using her work in that book to promote their own magnesium products. In 2014, she launched her company RNA Reset, where she sells many different minerals in picometer form that includes magnesium, potassium, calcium, zinc, a lot of really interesting products with that line that she mentions briefly throughout the show. So in this interview, she breaks down what yeast overgrowth is, how she used to treat it herself, the benefits of saccharomyces boulardii, how fluoroquinolones play into this subject, how she's seen picometer magnesium cause a yeast die-off effect, common symptoms of yeast overgrowth. I ask her about tinnitus. She talks about radionics, what she prioritizes for liver detox, her thoughts on the attack on supplements, why she thinks magnesium L-threonate is overrated. Ask her about magnesium baths, EMF sensitivity, and the roles that magnesium plays in that. She shares how much magnesium she takes daily, and I ask her where she gets her calcium. It's always really fun to hear Dr. Carolyn Dean's perspective on all these different health topics. So enjoy the show. Here is Dr. Carolyn Dean. Okay, Dr. Carolyn Dean, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Good to be here. I missed you. It's been a while.
Missed you too. Yeah, really enjoyed our first chat and just really appreciate all the info that you share. I've been seeing you pop up on my YouTube feed a lot with little quick tips about all sorts of stuff. I think today the video I saw, you were talking about staying fit after 50, and it was all the little things that you do to help circulation.
Like standing on one foot and putting my sneakers on or putting my clothes on. People, what's she talking about? But seriously, most people, they're leaning against a wall or holding on to something. They don't even realize that they should practice balance and can practice balance with such simple things. You know, when you're walking, you walk one foot at a time. You're always balancing on one foot. And, you know, when I think of the Biden trip, you know, where he tripped over that sandbag, he had another foot to stand on. I mean, what was the problem? Anyway.
Yeah, I think in the video you said if you don't use it, you lose it. That goes for your balance, right?
Very important.
I love it.
That's what that's what breaks hips. You know, when people trip and fall, they break their hips, you know, as they get older, if they don't have enough magnesium and don't have enough muscle tone. So everything we do should be focused toward getting healthier and staying alert and physically and mentally.
I love it. Yeah, I think I got into walks and I just didn't realize the power of just walking, especially in the morning after breakfast, just after a meal in general, and how much better my digestion is, even just doing like a 5 to 10 minute walk. It doesn't even have to be really long. I feel the difference. But in this show, our focus is going to be sugar, Candida, and yeast overgrowth. And before I hit record, I was telling you a little bit about my history. This was over a decade ago when I tried the fruitarian thing and I was raw vegan, and I was really slamming the bananas and dates quite a bit. And what's interesting is I had great energy. I fell asleep fine, but over time, that probably isn't the best route to go. And then I started incorporating grass-fed beef and bison. I learned about, actually high quality meat that you don't learn about from the vegan documentary. And I got on that and my health improved dramatically.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, my foster daughter, she was a strict vegan for many years, and even though she knew I mean, I'm an O blood group, I'm an animal eater, and I've tried vegetarian and didn't feel well, but it takes people a long time. It took her about 20 years of this until her teeth started falling out, that she realized that she wasn't getting enough protein. So young people, they can, slam a vegan high fruit diet, because I think that's the only thing that keeps you on a vegetarian vegan diet is the fact that you think you can eat a lot of fruit and make a lot of vegan desserts, because you really have to be a decent cook to make a vegan vegetarian diet palatable. So it catches up with you, all the sugar, the glycemic highs that you hit, and your body's always having to adjust. Um, a can of Coke has 10 teaspoons of sugar. So, you hit that and you have 5 times the amount of sugar in your blood stream when you take a can of Coke. Should I mention brand names? Anyway, can of soda. So when you have five times more sugar in your bloodstream than you should have, the body has to go to work. It has to throw it all that insulin to push that sugar away, and the sugar will go into cells. And there in certain areas of the body, like the eyes, and I guess the kidneys get hit, and the small capillaries and the cells in the fingers and toes, they get hit with the sugar, so that the sugar then does some sort of metabolic functions inside the cell, can't get back out, and starts to produce those glycation products and create the crystals and everything. So it's a process and it takes time. And I guess you just can't go by how you feel in the moment. You have to do the research and see what happens after 20 and 30 years to people who followed your diet. But it's never going to change. I mean, it's like we're born biohackers. I've been biohacking for, 60 years, for Pete's sake. But let me just say this at the beginning, that I have graduated biohacking, because now I know what to do. I don't have to biohack anymore.
I love it. Unless maybe you travel, right? And you're in a hotel or something and you need to do little things to.
That's true too, but I mean, I have a number of formulas which the FDA won't let me name, that I really think make the difference, because what happens is our bodies have the ability to detoxify, to metabolize, to do the right thing. And my philosophy is that if you give the body the right building blocks, it just does its job. It's like when we intervene and start eating all these omega-6 fats to the tune of 10 times omega-6 to one time omega-3s, that we create this inflammatory situation. I mean, seriously, I know if I eat a bag of some snack food that's high in omega-6s, my knees start to feel a little tight. And that's inflammation in your joints. So we've created an inflammatory lifestyle with our diet, with too much calcium in the diet, without enough magnesium. You can sort it all out. And it comes back to constantly assessing how you feel according to what you're doing, which is what, biohacking is. But not going crazy. I mean, my thing about cold plunges, for example, is yeah, they're great, et cetera, et cetera. If you do it constantly and you don't supply the nutrients that you lose when you do those maneuvers, hot saunas, you're sweating out all your minerals. And the cold plunges, you are seriously saying to your body, you're about to die, do something. So your body thinks, oh, I'm dying. And you throw out the adrenaline and the growth hormone and all the things that you measure. And you measure these things and say, wow, cold plunges and hot sun is there. Awesome. Look what my body is creating. Fine. But then I end up talking to the people who say, well, I did all this, especially with hot saunas, and I just get totally wrecked because my minerals are so low.
Have you seen people get mineral depleted doing coffee enemas? Because that's a practice I just got back into because I was supplementing copper, and then previous to that, I was just getting a ton of copper in my diet because I didn't like meat for the first several decades of my life. So I had pretty much no zinc coming in and just all this copper. And I know 50% of copper is bound up in bile. So just to get those bile ducts flowing and increase production, thin it out, is super important, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, taurine does that too. I just realized recently taurine is important for that. So coffee enemas, yeah, they're going to they're going to, upset your microbiome. And what's everybody talking about these days but the microbiome balance? And when I do my coffee enemas, I put a probiotic in retention enema at the end of it. But my story with coffee enemas is I got addicted to them. I got addicted physically to them because they say you don't absorb the caffeine. You absorb the caffeine. And so I would wake up in the morning and think, I think I have a toxic headache. I better do my coffee enema. Do the coffee enema. Oh, the headache's gone. That worked. I was just treating my coffee withdrawal, for Pete's sakes. So, if you've got enough of the right magnesium, a picometer magnesium, that makes your peristaltic action of your intestines work properly, your bowels function, properly. And then the microbiome thing, you wanted to get into yeast overgrowth. The whole microbiome story is, to my mind, what I read is ignoring yeast. They'll mention, fungi. Oh yeah, there's yeast, but they're just going into SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They're talking about all the probiotics, and of course they just sort of focus on lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, which are, like the two lesser cousins of the real important soil-based bacteria. So there's a lot there that I learned about way back. Back in it was 1986 up in Toronto. I was on I guess it was just a provincial TV show on TV Ontario for 90 minutes with Dr. William Crook. And Dr. Crook, he's the guy that wrote the Yeast Connection back in 1983. So in 86, he was up in Toronto. I was on the show with him. We were talking about yeast. I'd already learned about it in my naturopathic training after my medical training. And I was the yeast expert. We had 80,000 people call into that show that night. It was a 90-minute show, so, it was a long enough time. 80,000 people. I've got a written document that they couldn't believe at the station. So people are so interested in what's happening to their gut, and we're trying to find the reason for it. But because yeast is so hard to treat, it's been sidelined. The allopathic medicine thought, just called Crook a kook and a quack, and he didn't have any evidence. But the evidence is anecdotal in all the people who, like myself, growing up on antibiotics, and man, did I love sugar, and then the birth control pill, and then the stress of med school. So I was a walking yeast bomb, and I tried for decades. There was one whole decade I didn't touch sugar, wheat, or dairy. Back then, we didn't even know about gluten so much. So sugar, wheat, and dairy. And, I would take, someone would have a dessert and say, here you go. And just let me smell it. So I would smell these foods and not eat them. and I was, I guess I was taking maybe some sauerkraut and rotating antifungal herbs and doing all that I could. And it's only in the past maybe 5 years I finally decided I can't I can't be so strict, and I can't make people be that strict. So that's when I got into Saccharomyces boulardii, a very gentle antifungal that they use to treat children's diarrhea. So it's a very safe nutrient, and it's also a probiotic because it's a type of yeast itself that bumps out Candida yeast. So I looked at Saccharomyces boulardii, humic fulvic acid for the soil-based probiotic, prebiotic, and picometer silver. And with that approach, I mean, personally, I'm able to just eat what I want to eat. I'm normal again. I don't have to be so strict. And every once in a while, I'll get my little clues. In my case, it's getting staphylococcal boils in my nostrils. And I got those when I was in the hospitals, doing my rotations because staph is everywhere. So I had yeast overgrowth, and then that makes a home for bacteria. When your mucous membranes are colonized with yeast, then bacteria, oh, here's a nice home. And so when I get those little boils, I would say, okay, let's go on a fruit fast, or stop the cakes and cookies. But anyway, so that's we have to look at yeast as an underlying organism in our bodies. It's got a job to do, just like mildew and mold in the forest break down the dead trees and whatever. Yeast is in our large intestine to break down the food that we just swallowed whole and it went through without digesting. So it feeds on that, and it cleans up the environment. But when we take antibiotics that kill off good and bad bacteria, and a lot of sugar that feeds them, the stress, the cortisol that feeds the yeast, birth control pill, hormones, then the yeast in the large intestine, which are usually just in the little round budding stage, they turn into these thread-like mycelial stage. They crawl up into the small intestine, where they're not hampered by the microbiome because it's been killed off with the antibiotics. And then it's those thread-like mycelial yeast that poke holes in the small intestine, cause leaky gut. And then through these small poked holes, you get the 78 yeast toxins, you get undigested food molecules, you get the chemicals that the body, the intestinal process can't break down. I mean, when you think of the drugs, I don't know if we've talked about this before, Matt, maybe, but there are a lot of common drugs, Prozac, Cipro, that are fluoride-based drugs. And the intestinal microbiome, it will break down those drugs and release the fluorine atoms. And then that fluorine will bind to magnesium, make a magnesium fluoride product or compound that gravitates to tendons and joints. So that's where Cipro gets its FDA warning about tendon rupture, and they haven't got a clue what's causing it. So there.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I had a whole show. A friend of mine, she said poison with Cipro, and I think they call it in the natural health community getting floxed. And it's a big deal. I mean, she's been bedridden on and off for years and done all sorts of stuff to. Yeah, it's quite the journey from what I've been seeing.
Yeah, flox, because the full name of Cipro is ciprofloxacillin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just terrible, and it's true. I've found that it's athletes that I mean, they're the most affected because they'll take an antibiotic so that they can keep doing their whatever games or performance, and then they'll just overwhelm their muscles, and then the tendons rupture because it's magnesium fluoride is deposited. It's just horrible. But anyway, I think you can heal anything. I really do think you can give the body the building blocks, because if you've got a cell that's damaged with like a magnesium fluoride compound, that cell has a life cycle. It'll die. And if you replace it with a healthy cell, then you start to heal your injuries. That's the way you have to look at it. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. People shouldn't give up, right? If they get one of the chronic things I've been seeing, and you've probably been hearing this for years, tinnitus seems to be like an epidemic. Like on social media, I mean, I just keep track of like the common chronic things people are dealing with, and no one seems to know the answer. I mean, I hear magnesium, and then I'll hear some other solutions potentially, but I don't know anyone that's fully gotten rid of it yet. It's just gotten a little better,
Right. Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, I personally have tinnitus because I have a hearing condition called otosclerosis, where my stirrup anvils, stapes, and hammer, they got calcified. That should have been my first clue to magnesium deficiency.
Wow.
But tinnitus, I mean, it can be the hair cells. They can get calcified. They can get a little precipitation of calcium, and certainly magnesium can help. I mean, I'll have to survey my customers at some point, because every once in a while I'll say, well, get some picometer magnesium and drip some in your ears and see what happens. But that's a concentrated substance. So I think you should 50-50 it with saline so that it doesn't get irritating. And I should be doing that more for my hearing condition, because I know it's calcification. So 80% of known metabolic functions require magnesium, 80%. So, you hit me with anything, I'll usually have an argument for using magnesium at saturation, non-laxative levels, so that a person can, start. The playing field is down here. You raise all the boats with your magnesium, and then you have 20% left over to deal with, and do your biohacking. I was saying to you earlier, I've graduated from biohacking because that's my philosophy, is to treat yeast overgrowth, saturate with magnesium, and then see what's left over. And then maybe you go to some of these incredibly brilliant practitioners who use the modern forms of radionics that can assess the body. Now, I've known about radionics since, the first days that I got involved with natural medicine back in the 70s. And I have a concern with some practitioners where they, maybe in an ego sense, they want to be able to say, well, you carry your top 100 conditions. I'm going to help you treat them. Take these 100 supplements. You cannot go to a person like that. It has to be, this machine is looking at the energy of your organs and systems and even your mental, emotional balance. We are looking at balance, and what my machine will do and help you with is go back to balance. You cannot expect a machine to give you a diagnosis or tell you exactly what to take. I've done quote readings with people where within the hour my so-called aura changed 3 times, with whatever was done. Even with something like live cell microscopy, where you take a drop of blood, look at it under a microscope. I took one of my friends to a practitioner, and they said, it looks bad, it looks real bad. And I said, well, let her drink a liter of water and see what happens. And then it was, oh, wow, that looks pretty good. Dehydration alone can so affect any test that you do, any test. I think about, medical allopathic medical testing. They tell people not to eat or drink before testing. I mean, what's that doing to the test? They really, nothing is standardized so that we really know what's going on. Okay, back to you, Matt.
Well, I like that we're going on little tangents because this all ultimately circles back to like magnesium deficiency, I'm sure doesn't help people's yeast overgrowth, and being dehydrated, I'm sure doesn't help people's yeast overgrowth. And he keeps stacking on all these things. And I guess it just depends on where someone's at. If they've already been studying natural health for years, maybe they're aware of some basic stuff, but for like a person that's dealing with tons of conditions, they probably have both of those going on and have for their whole life.
Yeah, like you said, they're good basic places to start. But when you mention the magnesium in yeast, here's my story about that. I've seen hundreds, maybe more, of my customers who take picometer magnesium for 2 and 3 months, and then they seem to be getting yeast die off. So what's happening there? The immune system is kicking in just with the magnesium and starting to go to, whatever level it needs to go to support the body. And after a few months, after, they help with the sleep or the heart palpitations or whatever. We're not saying that magnesium treats diseases. No, we can't say that. But after a certain time, the immune system is ready to kick in and take care of business. And it will go after yeast, which I find so incredible. And that's where, I keep thinking of the microbiome, how, the setup through the mucous membranes, the tissues of the body, if they're being controlled by yeast and create an environment for other bacteria, for parasites, for Lyme disease, I really think that getting after the yeast is so important. And we can't do it with drugs. I mean, because I was sort of the yeast expert up in Toronto, a drug company approached me with what was it? I think it was after fluconazole or something, and wanted me to do a study. They pay me $1,000 a patient just to follow them taking this drug. I looked it up. It was a fluoride drug. Crazy. So you can't just bash away at yeast. You have to work with it, as I said, perhaps with the saccharomyces, humic fulvic, and pico silver, and whatever thing I mentioned.
Humic fulvic, picometer silver, and S. boulardii. And earlier you mentioned you used to use sauerkraut, which I love. I love doing sauerkraut with like breakfast, and then antifungal herbs, which I wanted to dive into both of those, but specifically the antifungal products, because I've megadosed in the past. I just like to see if something works, and so I megadosed oregano, and I had interviews on it, and it was really interesting, compelling research, and it was just really intense. And with something like oregano, especially, you can get pretty strong die-off symptoms, right? So.
Yeah, oregano, I consider it an antibiotic. It is so strong. And I'm pretty sure it's not just killing good bacteria. I've made sure that the silver I work with is just going to go after the bad guys. They've done some research on that. But I think oregano is too strong. So I mean, to work with it as maybe spice and all the rest of it is okay, but you have to be careful about using it medicinally. And I really got turned off herbs years ago when I moved from Toronto to Manhattan. It was to do AIDS and chronic fatigue research. And so we had an AIDS population, chronic fatigue population. We did all the blood testing. Everybody had every known organism showing up as antibodies in their bloodstream. And we were using a herbal homeopathic injection into acupuncture points using a little handheld machine that put an electronic pulse on it. It was crazy. It was so amazing. And we had such great results. But of course, we couldn't, there came laws about shipping it across state lines and everything. But I learned that the herbs coming in, we got them in Chinatown because my mentor at the time, he was a good friend of a Chinese, I guess he was a herbalist as well, who was importing and could guarantee the herbs. You have to personally know someone who's going to give you the right herbs. You don't know if they're organic. Now you don't know if they're swept off the floor and thrown into capsules. You have no idea where these herbs are coming from. So from, doing this herbal combination formula, I mean, I would take the herbs, boil them up, potentize it homeopathically, sterilize it, and inject it. I had my own lab. It was so cool. But now I don't trust herbs. I do not trust herbs because unless you grow them yourself. And even then, do you know if your soil is contaminated? I have had so many people tell me that, they tried this herbal treatment and then they started getting sicker and then they tested it and it was high in arsenic or whatever, because the companies can, come along in a moment and have cheap products and then they're gone because someone found out that they were contaminated. I guess partly that's why I started my company, is because I didn't trust what I was seeing out there. I was in touch with well-known herbal manufacturers, the names of which you would recognize. And I said, well, what happens if herbs come in from China and they're contaminated in some way? They have organisms or, lead or whatever. Oh, we clean them up. We put the nitrogen whatever through it, and then we do this and we do that. And I said, does any of that go on the label? Oh, no. Once we pass the basic FDA test about the amount of lead and contaminants, we're good to go. Don't worry. They thought I was, going to be a customer. It was like I was a spy. And I did not like what I heard. So that what you get in a bottle, I think of omega-3 fatty acids. I know, sidebar. But omega-3s, what are they doing? They're killing all the krill that are feeding the whales out here in Maui Bay and putting them in capsules. But first of all, they have to send the krill to some facility in Germany to do all the refining to get rid of all the contaminants. And what they use in refining is often different chemicals and gases, some of which can hang out in the final product. So I don't trust those things. That's why I work with an omega-3 algae. It's the algae that the krill eat, that then the fish eat, that then becomes the fish oils. So I just go for the algae. Boom.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy that has a company where he sells seafood sourced from specific fisheries that are kind of like biodynamic, fishing essentially. So they even have like giant pools. And he was talking about the feed, which I'm setting up a koi pond in the greenhouse next week. And it's really cool because you could really get nerdy with like what you're feeding the fish. And it's like black soldier fly larvae and algae oil is kind of, he was saying, are the main two things that a lot of fisheries will feed to make high quality fish that are, heavy metal free, parasite free, healthy fish that are farm raised, but fed the good stuff, which I thought was kind of a cool concept. And I've been eating it, tastes better. But anyway, that was great what you said. And I think we share the same philosophy that vitamins and minerals should come before herbs. I think a lot of people go straight to herbalism where they're probably deficient in all the fat soluble vitamins, deficient in a ton
Uh,
of minerals, especially magnesium, right? So they're kind of skipping a step.
right, right. Yep.
Those are so
Same.
foundational. I mean, you were talking about losing teeth earlier. It's like, where was my K2 coming in for my whole life? I don't know. It's kind of scary to think about.
Right, right, right. Yeah, foundational. That's right. So herbs have always been medicinal to me. I mean, I studied herbology in naturopathic school, and then with a Chinese herbalist in New York when I was there. And yeah, it's fascinating. And at one time, I wondered, well, do you suppose these herbs work because they have the minerals in them that the body needs, or the nutrients? But then, what did we do in herbal plant research? We looked for the most active ingredient, so we made it about the chemicals, and then we standardized that. And then, oh, we can make this standardized chemical out of coal tar, and let's pretend that that's what people really need. So we got so far removed from food and plants and herbs. It's totally adulterated, and now the whole supplement industry, I think it's run by big pharma. They've got so many big pharma executives who've said, "Oh, I've seen the light. I think nutrients are where we need to go." And they get into the supplement industry, and they bring their values and their marketing and all their BS with them into the supplement industry, and they make it all synthetic. How many of the companies that we knew about 20, 30 years ago, the supplement companies are even owned by the original owners? They've all been bought. Clorox owns the Natural Calm brand that I used to consult for. Clorox, for Pete's sakes. Um, there's a whole list. Just look up who owns supplement companies, and you would be shocked. You know, Pfizer, Nestle, Clorox, as I said. So they've all moved into the supplement industry because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah, it's a really important point that you bring up. And I've been going to health conferences for a while now, over 10 years, which is a blink of an eye, how long you've been going to them probably, but I've noticed that a lot of companies do get bought out. I think Garden of Life was one several years ago.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of owners of supplement companies, and I was partnered with one for a while, their ultimate goal is to sell the company. And I just think that's so deceptive to not communicate that with the customer, because they buy into your whole philosophy and products, but the ultimate goal is to sell everything to the highest bidder, really, right? It's like,
right.
so it's interesting. Yeah, it's a crazy industry. Kind of circling back to to the topic, all that's good stuff. Symptoms of yeast overgrowth. Can you see it just by looking at someone, like looking at their face and see if they have, you know, uh, yellowish skin, or are there certain things you could see?
Right. Actually, yeah, decades ago, when I was still watching a bit of television, when you'd see a singer, do a big belting out, and you'd see their tongue, the coated tongue. It's like, oh my God, yeast overgrowth. So that's the big one, is the coated tongue. And then there is a puffiness to yeast because when you're toxic, your body will retain fluid just to try to dilute the toxins. So, you're not going to be able to bend your fingers, and they'll seem all thick. And that can be the B vitamins as well, especially B6. But there'll be this puffiness, and it's head to foot, Matt. I mean, it's like the fogginess, the brain fog. There are 78 different toxins that yeast produces in its life cycle. One of them is alcohol. One of them is acetaldehyde, and then the others follow along. There's one that causes symptoms of psoriasis, for example, zymogen, something like that. Maybe that's wrong. So there's all these toxins that the body then, the immune system has to treat like foreign entities and create antibodies to it. So you've got this fight going on, and that diverts your immune system from taking care of other things. And then any mucous membrane, you can get itchy eyes, you can get itchy ears, itchy throat. But then, if you look up online and do a search for candidiasis, what do they say? Number one, vaginitis. So they don't even look at it's head
Right.
to toe. It's intestinal growth with toxins in the blood. Because what some people think when you talk about head to toe yeast overgrowth is that you've got blood-borne yeast organisms. And I know some live cell microscopy people can say, "Oh, there's a yeast bud there." Yeah, perhaps, but it, and I've seen it. It's only in hospital settings, HIV people, cancer people, where they can get a yeast septicemia, where it's just, they're dying with it. So there's so many gradations of yeast that uh, people sort of focus on one thing, allopathic oh yeah, it's just a pesky yeast vaginitis, and we just give some suppositories or a douche, and then that's fine. And they're not looking at the whole picture. And as I'm saying, in the alternative medicine community, they just look at the microbiome as a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and don't even look at yeast because it's too hard to manage. So they just ignore it. So we're left in the middle, trying to tell people, no, you don't have to do 100 other things for your brain fog or your toe fungus. You just do one thing. And it's just too common sense. It's the same. I mean, what have I gotten myself into, Matt? I deal with yeast overgrowth that nobody believes in, and magnesium deficiency that nobody believes in. And I think they're the two most important things in the world.
I love it. Yeah, that's great. You have your work cut out for you. I, I like that you mentioned the alcohol. So 78 different toxins that yeast produce, acetaldehyde and ethanol. Because acetaldehyde is a breakdown product. Like when you drink a beer or wine, you get acetaldehyde. And I had a guest on the show, a health practitioner that works with clients, and he was saying everyone on Earth pretty much are walking around as alcoholics, even if they
Mm-hmm.
don't drink alcohol, and probably because of what you're talking about. I'm sure having these alcohol products in your system, you're technically buzzed all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And that's the sugar. I mean, you think of Alcoholics Anonymous. What do they do when they go off alcohol? They start really going hard on the donuts and coffee with lots of sugar. So they're still getting their buzz. And then you have to think of, well, what's the liver doing? Why isn't the liver detoxing? And for liver detox, seriously, you need the B vitamins. Taurine comes in there too. I think glutathione is helpful. Um, I have a combination of those things that help break down alcohol. And we joke about, yeah, this is what you take on the holidays. But yes, this is what you need to take out the trash from the yeast overgrowth. And you need to support your liver. And a lot of drugs overwhelm the liver detoxification processes. It's just incredible what the liver's faced with. But I think one of the most toxic things could be the high fructose corn syrup that we've been fed as a health product. Remember when people started saying, "Well, yeah, this soda it's just sweetened with fruit." And they made it out to be that high fructose corn syrup was a fructose fruit and therefore natural, and you could drink all you wanted. And you've got people who are talking about the fatty liver incidence, the obesity increasing, diabetes increasing as a result of us adopting this high fructose corn syrup as a natural sweetener.
Mm. Yeah, I wanted to go into all the different sweetener options, because I'm sure that's a big thing on people's mind. Because I've tried them all over the years. I mean, minus high fructose corn syrup, except when I wasn't aware of it growing up, consumed a lot of it, I'm sure. But we have NutraSweet and all the things you find at a restaurant on the table there, the sweeteners you could put in your coffee, aspartame. But then we have refined white sugar, there's brown sugar. And then now we have erythritol, stevia, monk fruit. And then we have, more natural honey, like raw honey, maple syrup, which are my favorites. And yeah, just curious if you were to kind of put them on a list, do you think they're all equally contributing to yeast overgrowth, even though there's nutrients in maple syrup and honey versus like, would you say the refined sugar is like rocket fuel for the Candida? Like there's just levels at which they feed it?
Yeah, when you go through all that, Matt, it makes me wonder, how did we get to be so sugar addicted? It's like, don't we have any love in our lives? And we think we need all this sugar to feel warm and fuzzy. It's just so sad. But this is the brainwashing and marketing, advertising. It's either fatty or sugary that grabs our taste buds. So what we've got is the natural sugars, fruit sugars. Monk fruit is natural. In the farm that I support heavily, in our farm store, some of our desserts are sweet with monk fruit. So that's supposedly a low glycemic sugar, but it's still sugar. People ask me all the time, what about, I think it's sucanate or sucanat? It's a molasses type sugar. It's still sugar. Everything, honey is still sugar. Maple sugar is still sugar. Yeah, it has some minerals, but it doesn't offset what happens when the body has to metabolize these sugars. I think for fruit sugars you need who was it? Campbell McBride. She wrote a book about I don't know what was about specifically, but she said you need 58 molecules of magnesium to metabolize 1 molecule of fruit sugar. And for the blood sugar glucose, you only need 26 molecules, something like that, half as much. So there's a price to pay in the body when we're trying to metabolize these sugars. As I said before, you take your 10 teaspoons of sugar from a can of soda, and the body goes into overdrive with the insulin. And then, no sooner have you gotten rid of that excess sugar, your excess of insulin actually lowers your blood sugar, so you're hypoglycemic, and then adrenaline has to come up to pound your glycogen out of your liver, and then you get heart palpitations, you can get an anxiety attack because your blood sugar is low. That's a consequence of too much sugar. The mood swings that follow along the adrenaline swings. You mentioned aspartame NutraSweet. That is just pure poison. There are two amino acids there, L-phenylalanine, and maybe it's aspartate. And on their own, they are negative brain neurotransmitters, and they cause so many problems. I mean, you just look up the side effects of aspartame and the political history of how aspartame got accepted by the FDA was just criminal. So, and it doesn't really help. I mean, finally, some studies have come out mainly through Europe about aspartame and how when people take it, it actually makes them feel like, oh, I'm taking this natural thing. It's a zero sugar. That means I can eat more sugar. But they actually gain more weight on these zero sugar products. So they have to be avoided. They're completely toxic. So I think I'm with you, Matt, because I know you like fruit. I like fruit. Good grief, I'm living in Maui. I could show you my kitchen, with the mangoes and the papayas and the bananas and the star fruit. And on and on. And you can't avoid nature's bounty, which comes with fiber. We need the fiber. What is fiber? It's a prebiotic. Bar none, fiber is what feeds probiotic bacteria. It feeds your intestinal bacteria. You have to have that fiber. When we had the height of the keto craze, where people were, lots of meat and we can't eat the fruit and the high carb vegetables, so they weren't getting any fiber. They were really messing up their microbiome and causing an imbalance there. And they were, whatever minerals and vitamins you can get from your fruit and vegetables, they weren't getting those either. So that created a whole problem.
Yeah, I did really low fiber for a couple years, and it messed me up pretty good. And recently, like this year, I added back in just beans, simple, Eden brand, clean, organic beans. And I feel really good with, beans and salt and butter or something like that, just as a little snack, just to up my fiber. But there's so many sources. I mean, that's more of like the North Idaho source of fiber, especially in the winter, because it's harder to get in season ripe fruit here. less.
When you said that, it's like, the beans for my fiber. How many things have we seen in, just the biohacking world, but just the world of health tips? Seriously, if you listed them all, it's like 100 things. Back in the day when there was just Adele Davis to read, and seriously, there were only a couple of health books back in the day. And even then it was like, you have to eat liver and you have to, what was it? We were into nutritional yeast and you have to bake your own bread. And then there were so many things. It's on total overload. I can't even stand it. So I don't know how the public can. You have to be a serious biohacker in order to just incorporate all these things. And that's another reason why, when I discovered my severe magnesium deficiency and I get the laxative effect from magnesium, I had to make my own picometer magnesium. I thought, man, I have to create, really basic nutrients for people, because we're just not getting them. We're grabbing at these, magic bullets that really are not sustainable. You just get, even someone who will say, you should have an apple and a carrot and a celery every day. It's like, I can't do that. and now I'm going to die. And that's what they make it sound like. You have to have this. And,
there's a lot of fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone's already stressed out, right? So researching health makes you more stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of silly, but
yeah.
But yeah, and I think I was in the superfood thing where it's like, goji berries were the big thing for a while, or cacao. They have has all your magnesium, or goji has all your protein, and but
and then you find out that chocolate has histamine and it's going to kill you. And then Buddy comes along and says that lectins are filled with doom. And then you find out, well, if you cook the lectin foods, they go away. It just is unbelievable how people will grab on, something that supposedly it's like me. It's like me grabbing on magnesium and making it the only thing that's going to help you. But I know it's true, Matt.
It's a big piece for sure. And I don't think there's enough in our food, because there's still a lot of people that say that. And I'm still surprised. Like, we can get all of our minerals from our food, and they wouldn't grow if they were mineral deficient. They wouldn't be able to grow. And I'm like, well, humans can grow if they're mineral deficient, right? I know we're different from plants, but there's a lot of minerals.
But what they do, I live right beside a golf course, and what they do is they spray the crops with nitrogen and phosphorus. What is it?
NPK, phosphorus. Potassium.
Yeah, and they do put magnesium on the greens here as well. So they know how to make the plants look good, but it's not in the soil. It, you know, it's
Yeah,
there.
I'm looking out the window at our geodesic dome, and it's so fun researching because like I've had interviews with a permaculture guy and learned a lot over the last couple of years, and I still have a lot to learn. But the pH of the soil, is my understanding, is what opens and closes doors to allow minerals to enter. And I thought that was such a great analogy because there's
Yeah,
so many things. I mean, the soil needs fulvic and humic, it needs microbes, and it needs fungus, and it's like a
yeah.
symphony of things. And most of the soil our food's grown on doesn't have those things.
Mm-mm. No, we've gotten to the point where we think what synthetic meat is going to save the planet. There's no focus on anything organic in farming. And again, that's why I'm so big on my biodynamic organic farm here, because that's what's going to save the Maui population. And you know, no one's talking about it in any big way. So it's pretty hopeless, Matt. We're doomed.
Well, I think it's up to like people having their little farming operations. I mean, I'm looking forward to growing as much food as possible in this little 40-foot enclosed supercharged area.
You know, your greenhouse with your koi pond.
Right.
Well,
Around 3,000. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
we have a big pond in the farm, and then we'll take the water, you know, with all the fish droppings, and that's a fertilizer. I mean, everything is recycled.
Yeah, I love it. I just learned today, this morning, actually, that there's a pumpless system that basically I'm going to set up that takes water from the koi pond with the fish waste and then puts it into a tank and then dilutes it into another tank, all without pretty much without electricity, using gravity to just
Mhm.
like push it, and you can water your plants with that. Yeah, there's so many solutions. But it's I mean, I'm a fan of supplements largely because we're not there yet with our food production, and who knows if we ever will be, if we're going to go Blade Runner 2049 direction or if we're going to go a good
Yeah,
direction. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's got to be basic stuff. And, you know, I get frustrated sometimes when I see some of the other doctors who will have their health sites and they'll offer nutrient supplements, and there'll be 100 of them. There'll be 100 different supplements, and each one of them has a blurb that makes you think if you don't take this, you're going to die. And it's fear based, as you said, and that's just not right. We really have to start with the basics and, you know, graduate from biohacking with all these synthetic nutrients. Anything you take, you look up what's the source of this. Is it a source from nature or is it a chemical?
Hmm. Well, it's great. Trying to see where where we can
Yeah, I
go
know
with.
everywhere. We've been everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I think we covered the Candida and yeast pretty well. Oh, I wanted to ask you about protein because that's a big thing. Like it in like the Ray Peat community, they say, you know, you can't handle your carbs because you're protein deficient, period. And I think it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, they talk about potassium and some other things that are involved in insulin regulation, but you know, they kind of say, oh, you're just protein deficient. That's why you got pre-diabetes from eating carbs or
Mm.
whatever. But I know protein plays a role, right? But it's not everything.
Well,
Later.
you've got your macronutrient faction, and you've got your micronutrient faction. And I think, okay, here's what I came up against recently. I went to a conference. It was an award ceremony, and they had nutrition researchers as the keynote and the panelists. And I thought, oh, what's new in nutrition research? This could be exciting. And what they did was they took a study. I think it might have been a 2019 study by Dr. Kevin Hall, Hall, and he did the famous ultra processed food study. I don't know if you've seen that.
Mm-mm.
So he I mean, he's kind of a failed physicist who somehow stumbled into nutrition research
Hmm.
because someone thought he was good with numbers. Doesn't know a thing about nutrition. Just started to crack the numbers. Got 20 people to do like a couple of weeks of ultra processed food diet and then switch over. Maybe they had a washout period and switch over to just a ordinary standard American diet, which was also horrible. And he compared them. It turns out it took him 10 years to do 20 people. That alone freaked me out. So what he found, and he said that, the diets were equivalent. Turns out it was just on the macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fat.
Huh.
But one was ultra processed, one wasn't. Ultra processed means just more food additives and less nutrients and everything. So he didn't even look at the basic important thing. What did he find out? Oh my gosh, the people who ate the ultra processed diet, they ate 500 calories more a day than the non ultra processed. Oh my gosh, I wonder what's going on there. Seriously, I mean, 30 years ago, we knew that people who ate crap food ate more of it because they were trying to sieve out the nutrients from the crap. So they didn't even get that far. I face to face talked with two of these nutrition researchers, supposedly, and I said, "Do you realize what's really happening there? People eat more so that they can try to get some vitamins and nutrients and essential fatty acids from the diet." Oh, I've never seen a study that showed that. That's because you haven't done one. So what does this famous Dr. Kevin Hall say? Everyone was all agog that he did the study, probably because he got a lot of funding for it, because that's all they're looking for. So he says, well, now I have to find out why. Maybe we can manipulate the protein, carbs, and fat, etc., to make it more palatable and less, I don't know, less caloric. And he said that will occupy the next decade. And we have no hope. I mean, thank goodness for biohackers, because we have no hope that the nutrition research is going to help us. Like I said, all they're doing is trying to look for funding. They have no experience with humans. And, when I or someone asked, well, how do we get people to not eat ultra processed diet? How can we do that? They didn't have a clue. They thought, oh, well, maybe we fund people to eat better food. So they wanted to give grants, very socialist agenda. And so I got up and I said, well, I'll give you my clinical experience, that I find that in order to encourage people to eat better, they have to feel better. So I start with magnesium so that people will have energy and blah, blah, blah. Just like 3 minutes I talked. And then the one of the clinical researchers on the panel said, "You've just put nutrition research back 20 years because you're advocating one mineral is going to be helpful. We need all the minerals and all the vitamins." I mean, I was just floored. So there's no hope. It's just, we're all shooting from the hip, I guess.
Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy? I'm picturing that, and you're like going into the future, and they're watering the plants with Gatorade, and you're advocating to water the plants with water.
And were they the people that were sitting siphoning? They were sitting watching TV, just slugging back their liquid diet.
Yep. I try to stay optimistic, but you're right. Sometimes it looks pretty bleak, especially when you go to stuff like that. I think that's why I kind of stepped back from going to health conferences, because I noticed it was just, even the more advanced stuff, it was just parroting the same things over and over, and nothing really challenging, the status quo.
Right. And they all come, I mean, way back in the day when I was in New York and had access to more conferences, I'd go to a general nutrition conference, and then an anti-aging, and then an autism, and then a gut. all the different specialties, and they were all saying the same thing. We're toxic, overloaded, stressed out, and not getting the right nutrition and not getting the right supplements. So, okay, then what do we do about that?
It's kind of like
And then it's
I've
mhm.
seen videos of all the news outlets, CNN, NBC, CBS, and it's all the news anchors are saying the exact same word for word, same things. I don't know if you've seen that. It's the same with this, right?
Yeah, the same thing, and it's so sad. And when the supplement industry has been captured by just straight on capitalism and big pharma, they're going to say that they have the solutions. But at the same time, there's this whole media attack on supplements. After the non-demic, where people were taking a lot of nutrients, it became very important for big pharma and allopathic medicine to say that supplements were not going to be helpful, and really put down supplements. And when you look at supplement research, if they're using synthetic supplements, then yes, they're going to get negative results. So you can't even trust any of that individual supplement research anymore. You really do have to, again, depend on, biohacking and people to sort of, like bringing people to the conversation so that people can, figure out, well, what do I want to do? I mean, I don't want to dig into the minutia anymore. I mean, I know that the mitochondria are driven by magnesium and a few other minerals and some of the B vitamins. Okay, good. That's enough for me. I'm going to take those things. I don't have to go into the receptor sites and what affects them, because it all comes back to the basics. It always comes back to the basics. But yeah, I think the researchers in the medical arena are just going for the minutia now, and biohacking, we're going for the experience. And like I said, I've graduated from biohacking and I have the answers.
Well, I've noticed with the attack on supplements, a lot of it's coming now from like the uh, carnivore community. For the last several years, it's been like just all you need is desiccated organs, whether it's kidney, heart, liver, spleen, pancreas, brain, even desiccated like powdered blood capsules. And you can get everything from the animal and you get all your vitamins, all your minerals, all from the animal. You don't need any synthetics, even minerals. They look at those as toxic and stuff. And to me, that's pretty extreme and not very helpful for people that are
Right.
dealing with a chronic condition.
Well, it sounds to me like the extreme rhetoric in the vegan community years ago, when they said the exact same words about their diet, and then 20 years later, their teeth are falling out. And, I know from Charlotte Gerson, the Gerson Cancer Clinic. I don't know, maybe I still am on the board of the Gerson Clinic, and I knew Charlotte. We shared the same birthday, and she told me that they had to stop using their desiccated liver because they couldn't find healthy enough liver to give their people. So I don't know where these carnivores are getting safe enough organs to eat, because it's the organs that concentrate the toxins in order to protect the body. So I don't agree. I haven't really studied the carnivore ideology to know, but you've given a good overview, and I don't think it can't be true, and I can't yeah go for 20 years and see who survives that.
I mean, I started with magnesium pretty much. I mean, I did the Ayurvedic thing when I was raw vegan, and I was putting all these Ayurvedic herbs in my chocolate that I was making and stuff. But after that, I got to supplementing the right things, and magnesium was the main thing that I just started slamming in various different forms over the years. And that really skyrocketed my health, and especially my mental health. I mean, I don't know, C student. I think even failed classes in high school, and I wasn't the smartest, kid. But I think remineralizing, especially with magnesium, like it felt like a light bulb coming on over the probably decade. I mean, it did take really a decade, I feel like, to get my levels built up.
Well, it took me a year and a half when I started using my picometer
Wow.
magnesium, and I thought that was a long time, but I had really bad heart palpitations, so I was very deficient. And before that, I couldn't take any magnesium more than 50 milligrams without getting the laxative effect. So I think that's what's prevented a lot of people from being able to get enough magnesium to do what needs to be done to saturate the body and get your 80% of your metabolic functions working properly. And there's no real available blood test for magnesium that people can follow. The ionized magnesium test, it's something that we're studying in a couple of university studies to show the importance of ionized, testing the actual ions of magnesium that are what go into the cell. A picometer size stabilized ion of magnesium will jump right into the cells, whereas a magnesium compound, it's banging up against them. And in the one instant where it may disassociate in a liquid, that magnesium compound disassociates. If the magnesium's right up against the receptor, it'll go in. So we're dealing with a problem now. Magnesium has become very important. Everybody's read my Magnesium Miracle book. So all the companies are using my book to promote their magnesium. There's like a dozen different magnesiums, and people, but this one is supposed to do that. This one's supposed to do that. Well, you've got like the magnesium L-threonine. You see a label of the threonine, magnesium L-threonine, the 2,000 milligrams of magnesium L-threonine. You're thinking you're getting 2,000 milligrams of magnesium. You turn the label around, elemental magnesium, 144 milligrams. And I think that's in 2 capsules. So when I was doing my picometer magnesium for a year and a half, I was taking 1,200 milligrams of magnesium. So the 144, 2 capsules, I would have had to take 20 capsules a day, and I would be desiccated now because I would have been in the John the whole time. But anyway, the magnesium part of a compound is what you're looking at for the magnesium. The other part of the compound can be doing other things. I mean, threonine itself is a brain nutrient. Taurine will be doing other things than what magnesium taurate. But those other things, you can take them separately. If you're looking for magnesium, then you have to have something that provides you with a good, source of ionized magnesium. You see where I'm going with this? I mean, the marketing is like, this is good for, chronic fatigue. Like the pain of fibromyalgia, for example, you'll get worse pain with fibromyalgia. They've shown that people with fibromyalgia have low serotonin. Serotonin is mostly made in the gut. So if you have a leaky gut, if you have yeast overgrowth in your gut, you won't make your serotonin. What helps produce serotonin? Magnesium. So you tell me about fibromyalgia, I'll go right to my yeast overgrowth and magnesium deficiency as probable cause. It just comes right back to those basics.
I forgot if I asked you in our first show, and I recommend people go back to that one if they want to delve deeper into magnesium, because I think that was a long show and you covered a lot. But I forgot if I asked you in that one, are you a fan of magnesium baths, even just for relaxation? Like, do you think it somewhat builds levels, like whether it's sulfate or chloride?
Oh, definitely. I mean, when I couldn't do the oral magnesium, I was in a bath all the time, and it is absorbed. In the Magnesium Miracle, I wrote about a woman who sort of fell asleep in her magnesium bath and woke up and ran to the bathroom because she got the laxative effect. She absorbed so much. So yeah, it really does help and it works. I've found since I'm doing my picometer and I'm in Maui and I don't do baths anymore here. You know, you go outside and you sweat and that's your release.
Interesting. Yeah, I've had success doing all of it to get basically topical and oral at the same time with the magnesium dosing. And I
Yeah.
find that more beneficial than just one or the other.
Yeah, if you've got someone in a nursing home or a hospital, you take that hand lotion bottle, you dump out the hand lotion, put in magnesium lotion, and you just slather them head to foot, and they're going to feel better.
That's great. That's great. Well, do you want to get into some listener questions that people sent in?
Sure.
So we
Are
have
we live?
no, we're
Are we
not live. Nope.
live?
Um, let's see. So my friend asked about pre-diabetic peripheral neuropathy. Your thoughts on that? So he said his fingertips and toes have been getting sensitive. He said, "Do I need more vitamin E and copper or less sugar and carbs?" General thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, we hit on that for a second back where sugar will get absorbed into cells and then crystallize, not come back out and create that peripheral neuropathy. But those cells will eventually break down. And then if you have good building blocks and you don't eat your sugar, that area should heal. But what I found with the peripheral neuropathy is that uh, a magnesium hand lotion or a lotion with magnesium. You can even spray magnesium, and that can be very helpful. But there's also, the vitamin C for the capillaries. If you have weak capillaries, that's going to create inflammation in the fingers. The whole food vitamin C is important for the bioflavonoid part of things and for the collagen, for the ground substance between the cells. What else could I say about peripheral neuropathy? But it's mainly sugar. I mean, when you talk to some of the diabetes doctors, um, who the Jeffrey, who there's a friend of mine in Toronto. He's written books on diabetes and obesity. Uh, Jason Fang. Fong? Do you know that
Oh,
Jason
Fung.
Fong?
Yeah. Fung,
Yeah.
Fung. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard some of his talks. Yeah.
Jason is very cute. So he's up in Toronto. So when I last visited him, I said, I talked about magnesium and I said, what are you going to do with your dialysis patients? Because with their twitches and heart palpitations and everything when they're undergoing dialysis, it's because they're losing magnesium. And he said, yeah, I put up a magnesium drip. I said, so when are you going to write the paper on that and report it? And he said, I can't do that. He said they would, they would ignore it, shoo me out of the societies because they don't know enough about magnesium to be able to accept that. So, what Jason says in his books over and over again is just stop eating sugar. That's what will cure the peripheral neuropathies, the pre-diabetic, the hemoglobin A1C.
And all, all like, are we talking about refined sugar, all fruit, all honey, maple syrup, like everything, or just no refined sugar, just to specify?
We didn't really answer that. I mean, basically, because of the yeast overgrowth thing that I've been personally living with and talking about for decades, I say 2 pieces of fruit a day.
Hmm.
That's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Can Candida cause eczema?
Yeah, that's the zymosin. I think that's the word that the the yeast byproduct zymosin that will create psoriasis rash. So
Wow.
yeah, Definitely. Because yeast, it's detoxing through your skin, it's making your eyes and ears itchy, and it'll come out on your skin. When I mentioned about a couple of months of taking magnesium, picometer magnesium, and you start getting yeast symptoms, I didn't mention a rash. A rash is a big one. And so we know it's a yeast die-off. And skin problems are amazing. I mean, when in naturopathic training, we learned that if a child has eczema and they put all kinds of cortisone creams on it, then they suppress it, it will go deep and become asthma. And
Oh,
customers will write us that does happen all the time. And the cortisone cream is going to create more yeast overgrowth. I've had I had a patient once, a little tiny baby who had been from the time of birth, he had ear infections, and the doctors treated them as bacterial infections. Well, they came to me. It turned out his mother had yeast vaginitis when he was born. He got yeast ear infections, and they were giving him more yeast by giving him antibiotics. So we put them on a yeast-free diet, and this and that, and of course he healed up. So yeah, yeast is everywhere. And what was the question again?
no, that was good. Does Candida cause eczema? I grew up with it, like mostly on my inner arm, like on the other side of my elbow, and I would itch until it bled. And
Uh,
we had aloe vera in the backyard, so my mom would cut that, and then I'd rub actual aloe vera right on it, and it was
uh,
so soothing. It took away the itchiness and stuff. But it's funny because when I went raw vegan, it went away and didn't come back for years until I was really stressed, which was interesting. And I wonder if it was because I cut out sugar at the same time, all refined sugar, or if
right.
it's a combination of that and I was starting to get real nutrition in that I wasn't getting my whole life. I mean, I was a
Yeah,
normal kid doing pillowcases for Halloween and stuff, of
yeah,
candy.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely yeast toxins being released.
hmm Yep. Let's see. Toenail fungus. Is that another one? How to treat toenail fungus?
Yeah, that's tough, because the toenails, if the fungus is in the nail bed, it takes a while to grow it out. What I do with that is get people to drip on picometer silver, or mix picometer silver with clay, nice little mushy clay poultice, and put that on the nail and wrap it, and protect your shoe or your bed if you wear it to bed overnight. But clay and silver are awesome for so many things. I mean, uh, a guy at the market who he's just a groundskeeper at one of the farmers markets. He showed me his leg. He'd been on 8 antibiotics, and they were ready. I mean, they would amputate. That's the train that they were going on, and he just used clay, and I gave him some picometer silver, and it just sort of drew out the toxins or whatever. But I probably can't say that. Um, I take
That's
that back. I take that.
that's awesome. Let's see. Oh, I get a coffee enema question. Do coffee enemas help flush out candida, or do they help with it?
I think they do. I love coffee enemas. I I don't do them every day anymore. I might do them once every 1 or 2 weeks. And I do think that they can pull out toxins, and they see what they're supposed to be doing is stimulating the bile to dump. If you've got sludgy bile, then the coffee enemas are very helpful. But then, I'm doing in one of my formulas, I'm doing taurine. So I know the
Mm.
taurine is unsludging my bile. So I don't have to worry about that. And I have a family history of, my mom having gallbladder problems, and, burping like a sailor, the poor dear, and finally having to get her gallbladder out. And that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's so underrated. I mean, I stopped doing coffee enemas for years because I'm like, oh, it's just unnecessary, it's overkill. But it seems like there's no way around it if you want to get that specific effect and
Hmm.
really get the bile going.
Hmm.
Um, we had an off-topic question. I know you mentioned your blood type O, and that's a question I get a lot. People ask if the blood type stuff is real or accurate.
I think so on the level of if you're ill, then it's good to follow your blood type. And that's experience I had in my practice and at my health club at the time. I took a survey of all the people there and, it didn't matter what their blood type was because it was a healthy group. But in my practice, if someone came in and they were an O blood type and they're trying to be a vegetarian and they were feeling weak and everything, well, I'd say let's just experiment with some meat, and vice versa. If someone's A group and they would say that they felt heavy with meat and everything. Well, let's try more vegetarian diet. But I didn't go into the minutia like uh, James Diadema, his son Peter Diadema did the follow up books, and he went into such detail, and it's just too much. I mean, he must have been OCD for Pete's sake. The minutia was crazy. And, a lot of what we're talking about here, Matt, I'm thinking of the placebo effect. How anything you do can be beneficial because you're doing it and you put your attention on it and you want it to work. So it'll work. So that's part of what we have to look at when we are, biohacking or whatever. But you will know when something works. I mean, I knew when I took my picometer magnesium that my heart palpitations went away. Boom. So you look for things that work. Another example, and I might have said in our first interview, uh, when I took a multiple mineral picometer um, combination, none of the minerals promote thyroid hormone production. And I was able to get off my Armour thyroid
Mm.
60 milligrams. And you can feel my hands are warm. Look at them. So, and previously I had cold hands and feet. So
Wow.
there are things that will be obvious to people. And then there's less obvious things. I mean, I talk about how I don't want to kill krill. So I'm using omega-3 algae oil. And those things make sense. But then, yeah, when I did blood testing, I work with grassrootshealth.org, and we have their blood test kits, which is a finger prick,
Mm.
and you squeeze a couple of drops on a piece of cardboard, and you mail it in. And my vitamin D level was 19, and it's supposed to be at least 60. So I said, okay, I better take vitamin D. And I didn't notice the difference. And again, I forget whether or not I mentioned this to you before, but it's fascinating because after about 4 months, I redid the test and my vitamin D level was up to like 56, I think.
Mm.
But my magnesium level came down from 6.2 to 4.9
Mm.
because magnesium is necessary in order to activate vitamin D. So I took, 10,000 units of vitamin D. I used up more magnesium to do that. So my levels went down. Boom, experiment.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the last few years it was vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D. That was the mantra that I saw, which now I have no issue with that. I was against all those things a couple of years ago because I was kind of in a cult mindset and a cult community. Uh, but yeah, that's a good point. So especially the last 2 years with whatever 2, 3 years, whatever you want to call it, with what was happening, I bet people made themselves, they're already magnesium deficient and they became more magnesium deficient by
Right,
megadosing D.
right. So the blood testing, I've often put down blood testing because it's just, it's looking at the average sick population. There are no standards for health and all the rest of it. But, I realize, especially around, the past couple of years, that people do have to get their immune systems in check, and their doctor isn't going to help them do that. So if you know your vitamin D levels, that's helpful. The omega-3 index is helpful too. So I found that out and realized I really had to take that omega-3 algae. And we do a RBC magnesium test as well. It's not the perfect ionized magnesium test, but let me sidebar. Our ongoing studies with our picometer magnesium, we found out that you can store a blood test for 2 years and then thaw it out and run an ionized magnesium test, and it's equivalent to the original test. So it means that people can go in, get their blood taken and freeze it, and maybe ship it frozen to a lab that has an ionized magnesium test, so machine. So, we're getting closer to having more accuracy, because doctors who do not have accurate magnesium tests, they just use a serum magnesium, which is very inaccurate. They ignore magnesium because they don't have a test for it. It's like, oh, it doesn't exist. It's not even on the electrolyte panel.
I feel like we're in the Stone Ages with testing it, and I feel like that's part of the system. Not to sound conspiratorial, because now I question a lot of the, well, I know conspiracies was a co-opted term, but now I question a lot of the common ones, especially in the health community. But I think one of the ones that isn't think about often is just how behind we are on nutritional testing. It's like, it's 2023. Shouldn't we be able to, like, Star Trek scan the body and literally, without having to do a biopsy, like, see what's in the liver, see what the brain status is, using a non-invasive, I don't know, maybe light-based thing? That's what I'm waiting for, because we have to ideally look at what's in the tissues, right, throughout the body, to see the levels of zinc and all the different, especially the trace minerals. It's like, we're just guessing, at this point, but you're right there. I did that the other day, the wrong
I'm choking on something, but I'm good now. Well, what's fascinating about that is
I can keep talking if you need a minute.
We have no idea what optimal is.
Right.
So we don't know. When I went to Office of Alternative Medicine conference back in the first decade when they came into being, and I thought, oh, Office of Alternative Medicine, awesome. And then I asked in the conference, well, what testing are you going to use on nutrients to know what to give people for diseases? Because I knew enough from all my studies how important nutrients were. Oh, we're not going to bother with that. We're just looking for deficiency diseases. We don't care, drugs are doing a great job with diseases, so we don't have to look at nutrients as treating diseases. In fact, we don't believe that's possible. So again, they failed us, and they haven't allowed research to focus on, what is normal, what's optimal, and we will never get there. We will never get there because big pharma does not want people to be taking nutrients for diseases. They think that we're big competition. And when they send their agents around, they're not packing yet like the IRS, but they might as well be. They hate supplement companies. They come into a supplement facility as if you're just the worst criminals, and they're looking for something that you're hiding. It is really monstrous. Whereas, a good percentage of supplement companies are just trying to, sell a product that does not kill people. Whereas, in my Death by Modern Medicine book, I found that over 1 million people are dying annually of drug-induced and, medicine-induced iatrogenesis. So we've got this incredible disparity
Mhm.
between two industries, one that wants to make money and ends up killing people, and the other that wants to make money and doesn't want to kill people.
Yeah. There's probably some good aspects to it, like the FDA audits where they randomly show up at supplement manufacturing facilities to see if shady stuff's going on, and they're, sweeping the floor powder into capsules and stuff, right?
Right.
Oh,
Okay, I'm coming back.
okay.
I just got rid of some mucus.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, the season's, I mean, it's gotten so much colder up here and I'm just draining. It feels good, like with the change of
Mm,
weather. Um,
I can't believe you're back in your yurt. It's just so cool to see you there. That's wonderful.
it's the natural habitat. Yeah, it's great. The
Mhm.
forest life is for me. I wanted to ask you about EMF sensitivity, and I forget if we touched on
Right.
this in the first show. I think we did, but I've been to meetings up here in Idaho where people are freaked out and, you know, Faraday cages and, had to curl up in the fetal position driving by a cell tower and just crazy stories. And in my
Um,
head, I'm always just like magnesium deficiency, you know, and
yeah.
there's Martin Paul
Well,
talking about, yeah, calcium channels and how magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker, right?
yeah. Yeah. It sounds like what the EMFs do is make the cells a little more porous and allow more calcium into the cells. I mean, what cells are doing metabolically is they're letting calcium and potassium and sodium and magnesium in and out, the electrolytes. And if your cell mineral ion channel is a little flabby, you'll get more calcium coming in and causing, you know, um, either apoptosis or in nerve cells, they'll just sort of uh, simulate themselves to death. They'll keep firing, 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 firing,
Super
and then
excited.
they'll collapse under
Wow.
that intensity. But if you have enough magnesium is going to keep that channel closed. You're only allowed to have a tiny amount of calcium in the cell. So magnesium is going to keep it closed. And that's the way I look at it. But then, Ginny tells me all the time, Matt, that you've seen the vitamin C research about EMFs. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Oh, like you've seen some of my stuff talking about it, or
Mm-hmm.
Y- yeah, it's really interesting. Supposedly vitamin C can so EMFs, there's polarized and non-polarized, and supposedly vitamin C can change the polarity of EMFs in the tissue, which is a crazy effect. But at the most base level, vitamin C is obviously an antioxidant, and I think an underrated one. It's known as a scorbate in the tissues, but that's along with vitamin E, glutathione, there's this relationship between everything there. But especially vitamin C and vitamin E have this interesting relationship where they kind of protect each other. Or excuse me, vitamin E will regenerate vitamin C. But uh, yeah, I've played around with the idea of taking vitamin C before a flight, before sleeping in a hotel with 20 Wi-Fi signals, which my body's not used to here in the forest, and just you know taking it at different times and kind of tuning in. I'm pretty sensitive to EMFs and feeling a difference. But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
protecting against oxidative stress, and whether it's whole food C or I think ascorbic acid, so it's anti-ascorbic acid for a while. I think they both help. But yeah, there's so many solutions out there. I mean, for EMFs, people just absolutely freak out. And I'd
Mm-hmm.
always just go to nutrition first before devices. Devices are awesome, and there's some efficacious stuff out there, and grounding's good and all this. But like, what about vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, even
Mm-hmm.
zinc helps with EMFs? I mean, there's a laundry list of nutrients that people are probably deficient in, and they're saying
Yeah.
they're getting fried. Um, I, yeah, it's one of those topics that gets me fired up because I think it's just sensationalized and people are just stuck in this fear mode where
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
are you supplementing magnesium? Like, and you would say
And
pico magnesium.
yeah, and people will say, well, that's too simple a solution.
Mhm.
They really don't trust it. And it is very sad that, we have so many things that are affecting us on so many levels. And if we listed them all, you would it's too freaky.
Mhm.
So, what you have to do is say, um, every day and in every way, I'm getting better and better. I'm happy where I am, but I'm looking for more. The positive affirmations that we have to do, like I'm on earth and I'm a healthy, happy human being. And why should I allow in my, sphere any negativity? You can surround yourself with, a protective whatever. You can do all those things, but in a positive way. If you do it in a fearful way, you will actually attract the thing. I mean, how many times have we seen that? We're, oh, I'm afraid of this, and boom, it comes at you. See, I was right. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I don't mean to minimize what people are going through, but I guess I've had so many cases of patients and then clients on my telephone consultation, on my customers and my staff. I mean, one of our staff people, Jackie, she had to live in a tent in the wilderness, by a stream because she couldn't take any of the EMFs. And someone gave her my book, and she learned about magnesium and minerals, and then now she works for me. So there, back in the 70s and 80s when I started practice, it was all about avoidance. Avoid the food, avoid the electromagnetics, hunker down, put yourself in the bunker. And I just don't agree with that philosophy. I know that people can build up their strength and their immune system. I'm always saying, I'm healthier now in my 70s than I was in my 20s and 30s because I got my magnesium up to par, and then whatever else is around, I take care of. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's important for people to know that um, our body is regenerative and it has a blueprint for perfection. And somehow we've gotten away from giving it the building blocks it requires. We've gotten distracted with too many things, too much synthetic foods and drugs and even supplements. So just get back to basics.
That was great. Appreciate you saying all that. One of my favorite mantras I used was the more grateful I am, the more reasons I have to be grateful. That was like the main one I used. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it was about a year I was living in an RV. I was renting from my friends in their backyard, and there was a power line right above the bed in my RV. And I slept really well because I was stacking everything, and I had this mindset more than anything that I'm going to continually upgrade my environment until I get to a place that feels the best for me, which I believe I'm in now. And so I encourage people to do that too, like hold a vision for the environment you want to end up in. Don't
Right.
stress about getting there because I knew I had such a long way to go. I mean, it ended up being like a 3-4 year journey, but eventually it happened. And that was
Mm-hmm.
the mantras helped and just that positive
Yeah.
mindset, like you said.
And there's also the interaction with other humans. That's
Mhm.
why I mean, I could stay in my room and do what I do all the time because I do everything online. But I consciously go and volunteer at the farmer's market and then the farm store. I have 2 mornings a week. I do that. Most mornings I take my 2 hour walk along the beachfront down here and I pass by people and I collect smiles. I smile at people, they smile back, and I collect that smile. And I've gotten to know a lot of people on the walk, and we stop and we chat. You have to have that human interaction. Again, that's where, during the non-demic, when people weren't having that social interaction, that really diminished our health. our collective health.
Yeah, and it was all mostly happening online, and then you just get into trolls and arguments and ego battles, which is
Yeah.
just draining. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the human interaction. Last question, and I think I forgot to ask you this in the show, which is a good one. Eating fermented foods while
Yeah,
you're healing from yeast overgrowth, are you a fan of that? Like having a little bit of sauerkraut every day or
definitely. Definitely. In the beginning, you can overdo it. I've played with that, eating too much and it does, it just grumbles your intestines. You think, oh my gosh, that's bad for me. But everything you do, you have to just do it slowly. Yeah, I had my sauerkraut today at the farmer's market. There's a woman named Fermiana who makes fermented sauerkraut. She's just adorable. And she's got a pineapple turmeric, beautiful yellow sauerkraut. It's just gorgeous. So yes, sauerkraut. I mean, I don't know kimchi, kefir. I don't do much dairy, but so I do. I focus on sauerkraut. So I think it's important, to get fermented foods and whatever probiotics are in them. The fiber is important. I do psyllium seed every day as well as, some fruits and vegetables. So all those things are important to give our gut the food that it needs. And, what have they done in allopathic medicine? Instead of feeding those good nutrients, they give people fecal enemas. I mean, okay, it works fine, but let's not just be that extreme already.
to be the
Medicine
last
is,
resort?
I know.
Where's your calcium come from? I'm curious because you said you don't consume much dairy, and that's like
Uh,
calcium. I know too much, it causes issues, but it is a macro mineral, right? But
right. In the first couple of years when I was taking all that magnesium for my heart palpitations, I didn't bother about any calcium. I didn't eat any dairy. And then I find my knees getting a little bit, well, what's going on? And my knees are my calcium deficiency touch point. When I was playing with IV chelation, I did it on myself, just experiment for a while. It was fun. Biohacking. You put on the eye, I'm doing it all myself and I'm doing it. It's so cool. After 2 or 3 EDTA infusions, my knees started to ache. I was pulling out my minerals. You cannot do that and survive. So calcium wise, I got back into eating dairy. My knees were fine, and then I stopped eating dairy because I was getting too much mucus. So now I do a picometer calcium, and I only look for 600 milligrams. I'm not going anywhere near 1,400, 1,500 milligrams of calcium because that causes calcification and all the tightness and the calcium deposits. They've proven that. I mean, there's many studies, women who just take calcium supplements, which, a calcium carbonate is like chalk and you drop it and it shatters. Women who just take calcium supplements are at higher risk for heart disease, gallstones, kidney stones, heel spurs, and breast tissue calcification. And if you take 600 milligrams of calcium, which is the RDA for the World Health Organization and in the UK, and then you take 600 milligrams of magnesium, you've got a balance.
hmm. It's
And you
funny. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
and I get people to do a food chart, like a chronometer, food analysis to see, because you could be getting some calcium in your nuts and seeds,
Right.
in your dark leafy vegetables, and your sardines with bones. Okay.
That was great. Yeah, you made me think like the regular person that's not really into health and that's doing their Costco supplements. It's like fish oil. You have your multi-mineral, your multivitamin, and it's a lot of people are probably supplementing calcium. And what's funny is in our community, it's fluoride is the mind-numbing agent. but I really think it's more calcium that doesn't get enough credit as being, kind of the dumbing down, the brain fog,
Mhm.
just the person that watches mainstream news. I think,
Yeah, people say calcification and high levels of calcium are the aging. Um, they create the aging aspect in our bodies, but I mean, there's so many things that are work there, but it doesn't have to be difficult.
yeah,
Again, 80% of what's going on can be balanced by magnesium, saturation levels of magnesium, so that your body's working properly, and then your other nutrients. I mean, vitamin C is so important. I mean, there's so many things going through my head when you were talking about that. I mean, it makes collagen. When you're on, I don't know when you're airing this, but we're around Thanksgiving and coming up to Christmas. But you'll see on your elderly relatives the bruising on their arms. That's vitamin C deficiency. That's scurvy bruising because their capillaries are so weak without the proper amount of collagen that they leak. They'll bang their hand and oh my gosh, black and blue. So vitamin C is so important. Anyway,
yeah. I went down the Linus Pauling rabbit hole uh, for a while, off and on, and then looking at just orthomolecular medicine and looking at Abram Hoffer and um, this guy in Incline Village that was using he got like half the town on vitamin C, I think, and got miraculous results. And he was getting into like 20, 30, 50 grams a day, like crazy amounts. So
mhm.
it's interesting when you look into the case histories of using, uh, whether it's B3 or, you know,
Right. And then there's the Shoot brothers who did the
Mhm.
vitamin E, high
Mhm.
dose vitamin E.
Yep.
Yeah, everything is important, but I mean, I'd rather, small doses of everything,
Mhm.
except, well, and it's not even high doses of of magnesium. I said I was on 1200 milligrams. Now I just take 450 milligrams a
Mm.
day, a teaspoon and a half. So you get to the point where your body's saturated and everything's working in sync. And with biohacking, as you know, I mean, I've done it too. You'll overdose on one thing, and then you'll have all these repercussions. It's amazing because everything just works together, and nobody has figured it all out, sort of on a graph, how everything interacts. And it's probably different for every person. So we just have to do our own biohacking, our own experimenting. But bottom line, take care of your yeast overgrowth and your magnesium deficiency.
I love it. And it's a good segue to end here. Your website, rnareset.com. And I appreciate that you put vitamin E as mixed tocopherol specifically, not even alpha tocopherol, but actually the more of the complex of the isomers with your omega-3, because that's something I've been saying for years, that just that little minute amount in other ingredients of tocopherol is not enough to
Mm-hmm.
counter, because it's a seesaw with the omegas. And yeah, I just think
Mm-hmm.
it's cool that you thought about that with that formula. So
Thanks, Matt. I think
yeah.
you're doing great. I really appreciate you.
Oh, likewise. Yeah, thanks for all that you do. And if you guys haven't read Carolyn's book, Magnesium Miracle, it's been out for a long time now. It's-
I mean, I wrote it in 1999. It was supposed to come out the day of 9/11. Seriously. So it got buried for 2 years, came out in 2003. And now, hey, okay, I did an update in 2017 of the Magnesium Miracle, but it made it 600 pages. So nobody wants to read that much. So I condensed a book, and now I've got Magnesium, the Missing Link to Total Health. And it's one of these cool, what is it? Online orders. What is it? Order, and they print it. Order on demand, print on demand.
oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So I
Cool.
don't have to buy 10,000 books and wait for people to. So I think December 1st, it's going to be out. You can get it on Kindle, of course. And if you want to print on demand, you can buy that. So it's a really cool book. Like 150 pages. So it updates us, right to the present. Again, because of the FDA, I can't talk about my products in it, but people can go to rnareset.com or my educational site with talk about my radio show, my blogs, and my webinars is drcarolyndean.com.
I love it. Yeah, and I think on my website I have your magnesium, and I love the potassium. It's the way that one makes me feel.
Yeah, that was awesome. I don't know if we talked about it in the first interview, but potassium is a big deal to get a supplement out because the FDA puts this total squashing on potassium. They won't let you sell a supplement with a dosage of more than 99 milligrams. So what I did with my potassium is I made 99 milligrams a quarter teaspoon, so that when you take a teaspoon, you're getting 400 milligrams,
Clever.
which is clever, because it's stabilized ion of picometer potassium, it acts like twice as much, Matt. It really does. That's why, people just feel. And when you take proper amounts of magnesium, you don't, well, they work together. When you take enough potassium, you don't need as much magnesium, and vice versa. So I think people can get over, if they do get a, rare laxative effects with a picometer magnesium, it may be because they need potassium.
That's a tip.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. I mean, I learned so much. I love my radio show because we get questions from our customers, and I love questions. It makes you think. It makes you do some research and really, try to understand our crazy, amazing human body.
Yeah, people should definitely check out your YouTube, and then you do pretty frequent lives, and I know you probably have to run in a minute, but I wanted to say on that note with the potassium thing, it's funny because like I've always heard, and you might say like magnesium's the number one mineral we lose under stress, and I don't know if that's ever been quantified, like because I know we also lose potassium, we also lose zinc, and we also lose B vitamins, we also lose vitamin C, and there's so many nutrients that are drained under stress that I think it's interesting because if someone is like a lot of people are chronically stressed, I wonder if they find their individual ones, either whether it's one or a combo that works for them, that's they're missing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because when I look at magnesium research, of course, it shows athletes, they're under stress, they sweat out their magnesium. You give the magnesium, they have better recovery and all the rest of it. But they need to do the same with all the nutrients, and that's the trouble with nutrition research. Is they try to just look at one thing at a time. They don't look at the whole picture. And the magnesium and autoimmune disease. I'm doing an interview tomorrow about that, and I look at the research on PubMed. You type in autoimmune and magnesium. In the past 50 years, there's only been like 250 studies that talk about autoimmune and magnesium. They're not looking at it. It's not a drug. We can't make any money. Why bother? So we have to do our own research. And I know some people that, well, what's the research that shows that magnesium is good? Your own human body will show you whether it's good or not. You take it.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, and check out Flora Revive. It's Carolyn's product with boulardii, like we were talking about, humic and fulvic blend, inulin and barley powder, and that's a cool product I've taken of yours. It's a great blend for yeast overgrowth, I'd say too.
Oh, But that's not a disease. They don't believe it's a disease. Okay.
Awesome. Well, this is always so much fun, Carolyn. Thanks so much for coming on the show again. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I love the questions. You know what what you could do is gather the questions from people from the two interviews, and we'll do a Q&A because that's what people they have their own experience, and people are being kind of brainwashed so much by all the online material that they do not know who to trust.
Yep.
It's total misinformation, disinformation, who's marketing what, and the whole thing about Carolyn has a dietary supplement company. She's going to say, it's difficult. But if I hadn't done what I've done in terms of the picometer minerals and the food-based nutrients, no one else is doing that. These formulas are very unique. So I'm really happy with what's going on, even though the FDA hates me. They hate me.
Well, I think they're quite an upgrade. Like years ago, I was just using that blue bottle of trace minerals, and I was adding a drop to my water and just a little bit of that. And
Right.
I would do that, during a sauna or whatever. And I think your products are a huge upgrade from that. Like if I was sweating in a sauna, I would much rather use your pico minerals than just a trace mineral blend. Who knows what you're getting, what the ratios are. You have
Right.
no idea. So
Right. Yeah. We've really, made it very accurate. And the other thing we haven't talked about is in drinking water to put a good sea salt, because I think to me, that's your trace minerals. A quarter teaspoon of sea salt in a 16-ounce glass or a liter even. And we've had people, well, maybe it's partly the hydration mat and partly the sea salt trace minerals. And people say, oh, I feel better. I mean, and maybe that's placebo, but when you do something positive and simple, I think people respond. We can't make it as complex as it's become. We just have to stop that.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, even just bringing up salt, it's like, I think we're mostly past the salt-free thing now, but now everyone's like going the opposite side. Where it's like it's always finding a balance, and
And
it's
and what happened when we stopped doing the iodized salt is people were getting less and less iodine. And you absolutely need iodine for your thyroid, but you also need 8 other minerals.
yeah.
So then we got this whole thing about people taking like 50 milligrams of iodine, which is just crazy, and throwing things off. So yeah, we don't have to be extreme. There can be a balance.
Yeah, I'm doing an experiment. There's salt blocks on the lake here, and you can buy different blends. You could get just NaCl white blocks, or you can get cobalt, which they're blue. You can get sulfur, they're yellow. You can get iron, they're red, obviously. And my idea is like I'll watch the moose, deer, elk go up and lick it, mostly in the summer, and then it makes them thirsty. They go and drink, and then go and lick the salt and go and drink. And what's interesting is some go more to the iron blocks, and then some go to the straight salt. So it's just been kind of a fun. I love observing animals because you can learn a lot from them, and kind of seeing. You would think they would just want the pure salt, but a lot of them chose to supplement iron. It was fascinating.
So where do these salt blocks come from?
Oh, just like I'm in the country, so there's feed stores everywhere. So just going to like your country feeds, for a farming store basically, and you could just buy these giant 5-pound blocks that you just put in a pile on a lot of hunters use them to attract game.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's my little mineral experiment here in the woods. Is I'm just observing, seeing why, because maybe there's a mineral up here. My hypothesis is maybe there's a mineral up here like iron or whatever. I don't know. We have a lot of clay under the ground around the property here. So I'm like, maybe there's a mineral that all the local animals are more deficient in, because it's
Right. Well, you should
grass.
get your soil tested before you use it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yep. I'll need to do
Mhm.
that anyway for the greenhouse. So
That would be fun. I mean, yeah, we have a fertilizer from our RNA drops that we germinate barley sprouts, and then the straw from the barley, we use that as a fertilizer. But it's a whole other world to create that. But we're using that on the farm. I'm going to be growing a turmeric product because I think turmeric is so important, and it's very hard to find pure turmeric. But there are so many natural things that you can do to the soil that we don't even think about. The seaweed,
oh yeah.
you, you know, everything can just go in there. The composting, everything. I mean, with biodynamic farming means that when our poor little chickens stop producing eggs, they get sacrificed and dug under a fruit tree. I mean, everything
Yep.
is recyclable.
That's amazing. Yeah. I hate wasting food. Like that's one of my biggest pet peeves, just seeing food getting thrown in the trash. So all the meat goes to the chickens, the fatty portions of the steak that I don't eat. And
Yeah.
um, I'm experimenting now with like an electric composter. I don't know how long these have been around, but it's
Mm,
being fully off grid. It's kind of funny to use, but it runs for 4 to 5 hours, the quickest cycle, and it'll
mm,
use a grinder and heat, and then a little compost starter in there, and it turns, it basically turns it into 1/10 the material, the
uh,
eggshells, the coffee grounds, the fruit and vegetable scrappings, and I'm playing around with it. I mean, it's a good indoor solution, so you don't take up a ton of space with a compost bin.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
And you can use it in the winter. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's indoors, but it smells good actually when it's done. It's like kind of this. It almost kind of smells like coffee grounds. It's but sweeter or something. I don't know.
That's fun. That's great.
But cool. Well, thanks, Carolyn. I think we better end it, or we'll go on go on forever. So
I know. I know.
so fun to talk with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And mahalo and aloha.
That is all for today's show. It's always an honor to speak with someone that has been studying natural health for not just a decade or two, but almost 50 years. And if you've been following me for a while, you know how many rabbit holes I've gone down getting really detailed with vitamin D, zinc, and other nutrients. And I really appreciate that Dr. Carolyn Dean actually sells a vitamin D3 supplement as well as a zinc supplement, because those two are heavily demonized now in the natural health community. I do hope someday I can convince her that ascorbic acid is more powerful and more effective than whole food vitamin C. As I said near the end of the interview, that pico potassium that she sells is definitely my favorite product from her. I feel it every time I take it, and I prefer to take a liquid form of potassium and just down it versus the capsule forms. I've never felt much from the encapsulated forms of potassium, but there's something about her liquid form where I really feel the stress reducing effect. The show is posting on Black Friday. Hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I'm not sure what kind of sale they're running, but go to rnareset.com and I'm sure they'll put it right on the front page there. You can find both her magnesium and potassium on my website, matt-blackburn.com. I list all of my recommended products there. It's a great place to Christmas shop for your loved ones, actually give the gift of health. I think that's the best gift that we can give our friends and family. And over at Mitolife, we're also having a Black Friday sale. So you can find that at mitolife.co. And it's automatically 25% off all of our products. That's the biggest discount we have all year. It's a great time to stock up on Christmas presents. We are out of stock of a few products, namely the shampoo and the water filtration unit. Both of those have been flying off the shelf. So we may have another sale before Christmas. So look out for that if you've been waiting on those two products to give as gifts or to gift yourself. 3 new Mitolife products will be coming out in the next week or so as well. So look forward to that. Hope you're all having a great end of 2023. A lot of really exciting things to come. We'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.